Authority does not begin with force. It begins with permission to exist. Before commands were spoken, before laws were written, before weapons were raised, authority existed as the capacity to allow or deny continuation. This capacity was not abstract, it was embodied. It lived in the one who decided who could enter the world, what could remain within it, and what must leave it. That origin is feminine. Authority did not emerge from domination. Domination is a secondary behavior that arises when authority is already lost. True authority predates enforcement. It is structural, not performative. It is the invincible logic that determines which forces are allowed to operate and which are rendered irrelevant. The feminine origin of authority is not symbolic. It is practical, it is biological, it is ecological, it is temporal and systemic. Life itself does not begin because it was commanded into existence. It begins because a gate opened, and the gate is the first authority. The womb is the earliest site of this law. Not law as morality, but as a threshold. Nothing enters without consequences. Nothing remains without condition. Nothing exits without cost. This is not kindness. This is order. Long before courts existed, long before kings or councils, authority was exercised through selective openness. What could pass? What could not? What was sustained? What was expelled? This is why early power structures always attempted to seize or replicate feminine authority rather than invent their own. Control over reproduction, control over lineage, control over land as womb, control over food systems, control over inheritance, control over naming. These are not cultural accidents. They are attempts to relocate authority from its original source. Authority does not come from volume. It does not come from violence. It does not come from charisma. Those are substitutes. Authority comes from structural relevance. When something can decide continuation, everything else organizes around it. That is why the feminine has always been both revered and feared. Revered when its authority is needed, feared when it is remembered. The myth that authority is masculine arose only after authority was removed from the feminine and replaced with enforcement. Masculine coded power is excellent when it comes to execution, expansion, and defense, but it is not the source. It is rather the instrument. And when instruments mistake themselves for origin, authority degrades into coercion. Coercion requires constant reinforcement. Authority does not. The feminine origin of authority is environmental. It shapes conditions rather than issuing orders. A fertile valley does not command settlement. People gather there because survival aligns with its presence. A river does not demand respect. It enforces consequence. A womb does not negotiate terms of entry. It operates by readiness. This is the kind of authority that does not need explanation. Modern cultures confuses authority with assertion because it has lost contact with origin. It believes authority must be loud, visible, defended. This belief emerges only when authority is no longer secure. Secure authority is quiet. It does not perform itself. The feminine origin of authority is inseparable from timing. The authority is not exercised constantly. It is exercised when thresholds are crossed, when limits are reached, when continuation threatens collapse. This restraint is mistaken for passivity by those who only recognize power when it is expressed through force. Restraint is not absence, it is stored authority. This is why feminine authority often appears invincible until it withdraws. When it withdraws, systems fail rapidly, institutions collapse, relationships disintegrate, lineages fracture, people panic and ask where authority went, unaware that they were relying on it unconsciously the entire time. The removal of feminine authority does not create freedom, it creates vacuum. Vacuum invites predation. This is why societies that suppress feminine authority become increasingly obsessed with control. Surveillance increases, punishment escalates, law becomes rigid. These are systems of missing origin. When the source of authority is gone, enforcement multiplies. The feminine origin of authority does not require obedience. It requires alignment. Obedience can be forced. Alignment cannot. Alignment emerges when people recognize that resistance produces worse outcomes than cooperation. This is not moral submission. It is pragmatic recognition. This is why attempts to democratize authority often fail. Authority is not a vote. It's not a consensus. Consensus is a method for decision making among equals. Authority exists before equality is relevant. It defines the conditions under which equality can function. The feminine origin of authority also explains why authority cannot be outsourced indefinitely. You cannot delegate enforcement. You cannot delegate administration. You cannot delegate threshold judgment without consequences. When those who do not bear consequences make decisions about continuation, the system degrades. This is why matriarchal authority was rarely centralized in spectacle. It was embedded in households, lineages, land stewardship, ritual calendars, and reproductive cycles. It did not require a throne. It required position. Position is more important than power. Those who hold position determine flow. They decide who enters, who exits, who remains peripheral, who becomes central. This is authority in its purest form. It does not shout, it filters. The modern fear of feminine authority is not fear of women. It is fear of non-negotiable thresholds. A culture addicted to access, speed, and inclusion cannot tolerate gatekeeping. Yet without gates, systems collapse. Feminine authority is the art of gating without apology. This is why gatekeeping has been reframed as cruelty, not because it harms, but because it limits access. Limitation threatens expansion-driven systems. Expansions without regulation leads to exhaustion and decay. Feminine authority exists to prevent that. The myth that authority must be justified endlessly is another symptom of lost origin. Authority does not justify itself. It operates through consequences. When justification becomes necessary, authority has already weakened. This does not mean feminine authority is infallible. It means it is accountable through outcome, not approval. If a gate is closed incorrectly, the system suffers. If it is opened incorrectly, the system suffers. Feedback is immediate. Authority learns through consequence, not praise. This is why feminine authority requires maturity. It cannot hide behind ideology. It cannot blame others when outcomes fail. It must simply adjust. The approval of feminine authority also explains the rise of performative leadership. Leaders who speak constantly, explain constantly, reassure constantly. This behavior signals insecurity. True authority does not reassure, it regulates. The feminine origin of authority is also the reason why moral superiority is a poor substitute for power. Morality without authority is complaint. Authority without morality is tyranny. Feminine authority precedes both. It determines what moral questionings are even relevant. This is why early goddess systems did not obsess over good and evil. They focused on fertility, famine, flood, drought, death, renewal. These are not moral categories, they are conditions. Authority manages conditions. When authority is reduced to morality, systems become brittle. People learn to perform goodness whilst undermining structure. This creates hypocrisy, not order. Feminine authority is immune to this because it does not respond to performance, it responds to impact. The feminine origin of authority also clarifies why authority feels threatening to those who benefit from ambiguity. Ambiguity allows exploitation. Clear thresholds prevent it. When access is regulated, opportunism decreases. Those who rely on unchecked access will always oppose authority framed as feminine because it disrupts extraction. This is why reclaiming feminine authority is not about representation, it's about structural repositioning. You do not reclaim authority by being included in existing power system. You reclaim authority by controlling thresholds within them. This is also why feminine authority cannot be given, it must be held. Authority bestowed by another is conditional. Authority rooted in position is inherent. The House of the Trident teaches this because authority without origin collapses into force, and force without origin collapses into violence. The Trident restores origin by integrating the womb, the blade, and the law under timing. Authority creates opening. Authority preserves by regulating. Authority destroys by closing. These acts are not emotional, they are necessary. When a system remembers its origin, authority stops apologizing, it stops seeking validation, it stops performing softness to remain acceptable. It becomes exact. This exactness is often misread as coldness. In truth, it is clarity. Warmth without clarity confuses. Clarity without warmth instructs. Feminine authority does not choose between them, it applies what the moment requires. This teaching is not a call for dominance. It is a return to alignment. Alignment is not about ruling others. It is about governing flow. When flow is governed, domination becomes unnecessary. Those who resist feminine authority often claim they fear abuse of power. In reality, they fear losing access. Authority threatens entitlement. It does not threaten dignity. The world does not suffer from too much authority. It suffers from authority without origin. Reclaiming the feminine origin of authority is not regression, it is correction. This is why the House of the Trident does not ask who should lead. It asks who controls thresholds. Leadership is visible. Authority is structural. One cannot exist without the other. One can exist without the other. They are exclusively separate. When authority is restored to its feminine origin, systems stabilize. Not because they become gentle, but because they become coherent. Coherence is the quiet signature of real power. Authority began with the ability to say yes, no, or not yet, and never again. That capacity remains the root of all law. And I sincerely hope all students here present have been able to absorb this wisdom. We are open to questionings now.